Welcome to lesson 31. Today I want to talk about chainsaw maintenance and safety. So I brought out 4 different chainsaws here, 2 electric and 2 gas powered. And I want to talk first about the features in the chainsaws that are important to have in the ones that you buy. Secondly, we'll go to one of the saws. We'll show you how to tension the blade, how to sharpen the teeth, and as you can see in the front, I have 2 or 3 different sharpening systems, which I'll also show you how they are alike and how they're different. Let's take a look at these 4 saws here. I'm going to start on my right, your left. And I have a small electric one here. It's nice and light, but I'll tell you what, this is a reject for me. It's a reject because this piece right here, which is designed to protect the hand, does only half of the job. One of the biggest problems with chainsaws is kickback. You're making a cut, and for some reason you catch the blade wrong and it comes back like this. Injury from something like this can be catastrophic. This is supposed to be a chain break. So as you come back, this kicks forward, locks the chain, and helps protect you. This is just a piece of plastic. I wouldn't have this saw. Here's another electric. In fact, this is mine. This is also all electric, but it has a brake. So when that brake is set, this is locked. So if you have a kickback, it comes up like that, locks this chain, and can reduce the possibility of injury. That's a good saw. In the gasoline models I have here, 2 of them look very similar, and again, this is a really good looking handle. It really looks like a brake, but it's not. It's a piece of plastic that just bolted to this cross piece. Again, I have a gasoline saw that does not provide the safety that I want. It does have back here these prawls which will dig into the back of the wood and also does help the saw from walking. That's a good feature. This is not. Again, I would reject the saw for that particular reason. So that leaves me with 2. Both of these are nice size. This electric has the advantage of being able to use quietly. It could be used indoors if necessary. It's small enough and light enough for doing trimming around the shop or for cutting some trees or limbs. This gas gives you that same capability, but now you're free from any power cord. And you do have the necessity of maintaining a gasoline motor and all the things associated with that. Not a big problem. The things that are most concerned about having these things ready to run, in both cases, we have to keep them clean after use. There is an oil reservoir in both of them that absolutely has to be filled. As this chain runs, oil is squirted out on the blade to allow this to stay lubricated around here. If not, it'll freeze up and your saw could actually be damaged permanently. And this one has a reservoir window, fills here. This has a reservoir, gasoline here, oil here, and when you pull this out, you can then use the dipstick in here to check the oil level. Oil levels. So let me kind of clean up a little bit here. I'm going to take the electric one because it's lighter to handle, and I'm going to show you how to sharpen and maintain the chain and adjust it properly for most effective work. So let me straighten up a little bit, and then I'll show you these sharpening systems in the front. I picked up one of the saws, and I'm going to work on this one. I have no idea what the inside of this looks like. I haven't serviced it. It's been used several times since I've seen it last. So it'll become an interesting thing for us to find out together. I've laid out the tools I need. I'm going to need a long screwdriver for tensioning the chain. I've got a couple of brushes for cleaning up the chain, the bar, and the gear teeth in here. And because this one needs a 1/2 inch to take this off, I'm going to use a crescent wrench, loosen this, take the plate off, and we'll see how this looks inside. That comes off, this comes off. And now you can see the workings of this. The chain goes around the bar. There's a slot here. It comes back up around a sprocket, which is where the driving takes place. And there's a screw right here in the front that adjusts this bar in and out to set the tension on this. And I can tell you right now, the tension on this is way, way too high. So what we're going to do is clean this up in here. It's dirty, but it could be a lot worse. So I'm just going to take my brass brush and get a lot of this loose accumulated stuff out of here. Now when I change it, put a clean chain on, the first thing I'm going to have to do is to loosen this bar. Let me turn it around here real quick so you can see it. Right here is a screw. My glasses on so I can see. And when I grab this screw and turn it counterclockwise, I'm loosening the tension. Now see that? I can pull the chain away from the bar about 1/4 of an inch. After you run it for a little while, this will get hot and that chain will loosen up. And so run it for a few minutes and then recheck the tension. So now I've loosened it a lot. And what will happen now is I can take the whole bar and the chain right off the socket. There's the bar. This slot should be clean. And I can run my brass brush down through here. And at the end, there's a small sprocket wheel that rotates. And if it's not rotating, we have a binding problem, and that will be a difficulty of something that needs to be fixed. This one spins. And there is an oil hole down here to lubricate that. The bar can be run this way or this way. Every time you change the chain, you should upset your bar and look at it from the other posture. That keeps the wear even on the top side, and now top side becomes bottom side, and we'll just keep balancing the wear. So you turn that each time. So now that I have everything out of here, I can get in here, do a little bit more serious cleaning. And sawdust accumulates in all these pockets. And while I can spend a great deal of time cleaning this, which I'm not going to do because that's not the purpose of this video, you can see that there's a great deal of work that needs to be done here to clean that up. So let's take a look at the components again. The motor connects to this sprocket wheel, which drives the chain. This screw right down here pulls this lever back and forth, which is what tensions the bar. So I put the bar on, put the chain on, and then tension it a little bit. And when I tighten the top on here, then everything's held permanently in place. I have this pulled back, excuse me, which will allow this to turn. When the brake is released, this is locked. That's that chain brake I was talking about earlier. And what it's doing is locking the motor itself. In fact, if that brake is in this position, it won't work at all. The trigger here on the back won't be pulled. Now I can lock it. So I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here off camera, and then we're going to put this back together again, and I'm going to show you the last step, which is sharpening your chain, which does not need to be taken off to be done. At school, we maintain a stock of 2 or 3 chains. So when one gets dull, because I'm the only one who seems to know how to do this here, we just simply pull the chain off, put a new chain on, and then I sharpen this offline at a later time. So let's clean this up and then start putting it back together again. Okay, I've done some cleaning. It's better than it was. It still could be cleaned a little bit more. But what I've done is taken the bar, I put the chain around the bar, dropped the back into the slots, and put it on in the right direction. Now, the key, which is the right direction? It cuts on the bottom. This is the cutting tooth, This is the Raker. And I'll talk more about these and how they work, but the tooth has to be facing to the rear. This is the right facing tool. You can't tell it very well, but this is the next tool facing the opposite direction and so on. But I want them facing this way. So I put it around the bar and I'm holding it in place. Now I'm going to put this around the sprocket, motor sprocket. And these two holes, this one in this case, has to sit over this little arm here, which is what will tension it. So I'm going to drop it around the sprocket, reach down here and get that little piece, and it's in there. Now I have to put some tension on this or everything's going to fall apart. So I'm going to reach around right in front of your camera here, and I'm going to grab that screw with my screwdriver. And if I'm good, I'll keep it in the slot, and I'm going to put some tension on this. Purpose of which is so this thing doesn't fall off. Now, I don't know if that's the right tension. I don't care. So at this point, I'm going to take the plate, put it back into place. Now, come on, let's go in place. There we go. And then the bolt. And I'm going to snug this bolt down. And we have the saw back together again, either with a new chain or a replacement chain. Sometimes the links break and you have to put a new chain on. Sometimes you maintain more than one, that's what I do. Okay. So, tension on this is still a little loose. I would like not to be able to pull this chain out more than about 1/4 of an inch, and it should be a little tighter than that. I'm going to turn it around just a little bit more so you can see. This is the screw I was reaching for. And by turning it clockwise, it moves that pull back and tightens this chain. It was way too tight when we picked it up. Now, that's about the 1/4 inch I want. And after I run the saw for a few minutes, this is going to get warm and it's going to loosen up. So I'm going to have to re-tension it after it's run for about a minute or two. And that's fine. So it's on and it's tensioned. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this into a vise here. Simply I'm going to use a C-clamp. You open that up just a little bit more. And what I'm going to do is just clamp this down onto the bar and use this like a vise to hold this where I want it. So the chainsaw is free to move, and I've got it nicely supported here. So let me show you a little bit more about the chain, the teeth, and the rakers. So we're going to come in really tight here, and I'm going to show you that. So here is a tooth. You can see that it's angled back at an angle, and there's this little thing in front that's called a raker. And this is on the left side, this tooth is on the right side, and so on, alternating all the way around. When you sharpen a chain, you have to sharpen this face right here where the pencil's pushing. That's why it gets dull. And after about every 2 or 3 sharpenings, the tooth is getting short enough that this is too tall. This establishes how deep the cut is going to be on the saw. And this needs to be ground down every 3 or 4 sharpenings. The raker sets the depth. And if it is too tall, it's not going to cut. If it's too low, it's going to grab too much wood and actually bind the saw up and properly shut it down. So we need to sharpen the teeth, all the right-hand side ones, and then turn the saw around and do all the left-handed ones. And I'm going to show you how to grind the raker. There's 2 or 3 different techniques out. There's some new tools that just have come onto the market recently, which is going to make this really, really nice job. So let me show you right here the various sharpening systems. This is one from Steel, another good brand like this. This is typically the way these that you can buy, the least expensive ones. There's a round file here that has to match the diameter of the tooth, and your saw manufacturer will tell you what the tooth diameter is, and you can buy a tool whose rat-tailed file fits perfectly into that tooth. This one fits This is also set at an angle, generally 30 degrees. And on the back of this device, that 30-degree line is marked. So when I file this tooth by hand, I line this up parallel with the bar, set this down on top. Give it 3 or 4 strokes. Go to the next tooth facing the same direction. Line it up 30 degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on all the way around. Trust me, all the way around. Then you turn the saw around the other direction, and you do all the teeth facing that direction. Yeah, it's a little tedious, but it doesn't take too long once you develop the practice. This kit also contains a flat file and what's called a gauge. This sets on top of the teeth, and its purpose is to judge whether or not this raker is too tall. And if it's too tall, I come along and file it down like this. That makes it flat across the top, and I may have to radius back just a little bit. We don't want a sharp corner there. That's the most manual system there is. This is a different brand. And one thing nice about this kit, it contains a file for this diameter tooth and the 2 other of the diameters. And for me to work this, I simply place the file in the holder, latch it in place, get the little wooden handle out here, hammer this down, and here we go again. 30-degree angle, 25 and 30, both are marked on here. So 30 degree for the next tooth this direction is there. 2 or 3 strokes, whatever that number of strokes is that you choose. And for adjusting the raker, set this here, and I'm checking to see that that raker is lower than the tooth next to it. Now that's all manual systems, and they've done this way for years and years and years. There are old woodworkers who doesn't use any more than just the file. He sees this tooth, he lines it up. Same number of strokes on each tooth. Handle or not, doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now, I'm going to show you something that's just brand new, just came out. Steel makes this, and this is a really weird looking device. It contains a round file and a flat file and another round file on the opposite side. And guess what? This angle here is 30 degrees. So to file this, I'll set this on the tooth. This rod rides flat, and as it goes across, it files that tooth, and the flat file then does the raker at the same time. So the pitch between these two is already preset. I can open this up, I can remove the round files and change it to a different size. So this does everything all at once. Got it out of the hole there. Let's get back in there. So sets the raker, sets the tooth, and then go the opposite direction this way. Very handy. These are around 40 bucks, and you can get them at your local saw shop. Amazon online carries them, as well as many other options. But this has to be kept sharp. If the saw gets dull, you can't cut well, you end up risking more injury. The only thing I did not buy was what's called a stump vise, which is what this C-clamp is doing. It clamps around the bar. It has 2 prongs in the back. When you're out in the woods, you sit on the stump, the bars, bang it in there, and then clamp the bar like this so you have a nice, steady, rigid area on which to work. Now, using your chainsaw is something that I haven't talked about, but I do caution you that It is probably the most dangerous tool that a wood turner has at their disposal. Be sure that you have closed-toed shoes, specifically steel-toed if you could, because the saw goes down as well as up. I have a set of chaps in the other room, which we put on. They are such that when the chain runs into them accidentally, it won't cut you. Face shield plastic is fine, but a real woodsman's face shield is a hard hat with a wire mesh face guard, and that's even more preferable. Learning to use your saw safely, please go online, look at videos from Oregon, from Husqvarna, from Stihl, and look at the instructions they give you about safe operations. It's very, very important. And since all these saws are basically meant for cross-cutting, like cutting limbs off of trees and so on, recognize that when we do ripping, like down the grain, the saw is not really best suited for that kind of cut unless you buy a different kind of chain that has a square tooth instead of a cross-cut tooth. I hope this helped a little bit. Be sure that if you're going to do your own, you buy the best sharpening systems. I really recommend this because it's a real piece of work, and it saves a huge amount of time in terms of adjusting the rakers. Don't have to anymore. It's automatically done. Hope this helped. We'll see you soon.